then a resolution to grant site plan approval, file accessory apartment. Passed. And then old business 198 Dogtail Corners Road. Classified as a type 2 action under SECRA. T there. And then we set a public hearing for tonight. You can just delete the, I don't know why there's little T's that are coming up.
You can't change it. It's a PDF.
Okay.
I'll change it.
Yeah,
I'll fix it. It's a typo.
thank you. And then we had Mr. Luciano for Dover State Subdivision and a resolution granting an extension of his erosion sediment control permit approval and resolution granting extension of erosion sediment control permit approval for his other properties. And then we had a motion to adjourn. All right. Motion to accept the minutes. Motion made by member Lorbeer.
Second.
Seconded by member Palmer. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Motion passes 5-0 with 2 absences. Okay. Next we have a public hearing for 198 Dogtail Corner. Before we get to opening the public hearing, we'll have the applicant's consultant come to the podium. Let's see. Okay, so
Evan Pendleton with Insight Engineering, Surveying, Landscape Architecture. Just to recap the project, it's a single-family residential site, 4.3 acres on the east side of Dogtail Corners Road. There's a wetland in the southwest corner of the site with a stream that runs along the southern property line. The site's also bordered by the 10 Mile River to the east, and another residential property to the north. Project proposes to construct a 1-bedroom prefabricated accessory cabin to the south of the existing residence. Cabin will have a water service line from the existing residence for potable water supply and a new conventional septic system for wastewater disposal. We had received a area variance from the ZBA for the size of the cabin on May 12th, 2025. We had submitted the JD parcel determination to the DEC. They came back with a letter on, I don't have the date.
I think I have it here.
June 17th.
Yep.
Where they had confirmed that the on-site wetland is not regulated by the DEC. And also, since our last meeting, we had completed on-site soil testing with the health department. And we're working to submit to them for the septic.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Any members of the planning board have any comments, questions? No. We had a memo from EKRF.
Yeah, I mean, everything was addressed so far. I mean, pending the approval of the septic system, so, and then the public hearing.
Okay. All right. Engineer Berger?
Yeah, everything's been taken care of.
Okay. Thank you. Attorney Baldero?
There are no open planning board issues.
All right. Have I heard from our consultants? Any members have any further comments or questions before we open this public hearing?
None here.
Okay. Sir, thank you. Have a seat. I'll need a motion to open the public hearing for 198 Dogtail Corner Road project. Motion made by Member Sador.
Second.
Seconded by Member Palmer. All those in favor of opening this public hearing say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This public hearing is now open.
Nobody on the list.
Any members of the public wishing to speak at this public hearing, please come to the podium at this time. Seeing no one approaching the podium, entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
So moved.
Motion made by Member Williams, seconded by Member Robert. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Okay, this public hearing is now closed. All right. Please come back to the podium. Let me just see, we have... All right, resolution to grant site plan, special use permit, and erosion sediment control permit approval, 198 Dogtail Corners Road. Whereas the applicant, Gentile Place LLC, has submitted an application for a special use permit and erosion sediment control permit approval for the placement of an approximately 399 square foot, one-bedroom prefabricated cabin structure that will be accessory to the principal four-bedroom residence at 198 Dogtail Corners Road, known as the project. And whereas the subject property is approximately 4.3 acres in size and is identified as tax parcel number 7160-00-927735, known as the property. And whereas the property is in the RU zoning district and is located within the stream corridor, floodplain, and principal aquifer overlays. And whereas the project is depicted on a site plan entitled 198 AR Home, Proposed Accessory Structure, 198 Dogtail Corners Road, Town of Dover, Dutchess County, New York, prepared by Insight Engineering, Surveying, and Landscape Architecture, PC, dated February 12, 2025, last revised May 28, 2025, sheets OP-1, SP-1, and D1, collectively known as the site plan set, and was pursuant to zoning law section 145-10, accessory apartments are permitted use in the RU district subject to issuance of a special use permit. And whereas by letter dated March 21, 2025, the building inspector determined that the project constituted an accessory apartment, which must be a minimum of 500 square feet, irrespective of whether the accessory apartment contained cooking facilities. And whereas on May 12, 2025, the Dover Zoning Board of Appeals granted the applicant an area variance to permit an accessory apartment of 399 square feet. And whereas pursuant to section 37-5A, subsection 2 of the Dover Code, the requirement for architectural review board approval does not apply to single-family or two-family residences or residential accessory structures. And whereas on May 3rd, 2025, the planning board classified the project as type 2 action under the State Environmental Quality Review Act. And whereas on June 17, 2025, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation issued a letter of no jurisdiction for freshwater wetlands in connection with the property. And whereas a duly noticed public hearing was held on July 7, 2025, during which all those who wished to speak were heard. Now therefore be it resolved that the project is a minor project pursuant to section 145-63A of the zoning law, which is presumed to be acceptable, and the planning board hereby finds that none of the criteria in section 145-63B of the zoning law will be violated by the project. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby grants site plan and special use permit approval to the project as shown on the site plan set and authorizes the chair or his authorized designee to sign the site plan set after compliance with the following conditions. 1, payment of all fees and escrows. 2, Dutchess County Department of Health approval for methods of water supply and wastewater disposal. Be it further resolved that the planning board hereby grants the applicant an erosion sediment control permit for disturbance as shown on the site plan set, subject to the following conditions. 1, submission of $500 to be placed into escrow to cover the cost of site inspections by the planning board engineer. 2, submission of a performance guarantee in the amount of $5,000 in form, substance, and matter of execution satisfactory to the town attorney. Be it further resolved that before the authorized official may issue a certificate of compliance, the planning board engineer shall provide the authorized official with a written statement indicating that all work authorized under the permit has been completed in accordance with the approved permit. This resolution is being offered by
So moved.
Member Palmer, seconded by
Second.
Member Sador. Discussion? All right, seeing no discussion, resolution to grant site plan, special use permit, and erosion sediment control permit approval, 198 Dogtail Corners Road. Secretary, please call the roll.
Member Williams?
Aye.
Member Sador?
Aye.
Member LaRobertier?
Aye.
Member Palmer?
Aye.
Chairman Cortine.
Aye. Resolution thereupon adopted, 5-0 with 2 absences. Congratulations.
All right. Thank you.
Just keep in touch with the consultants and our secretary about next steps. And okay, thank you. Next on the agenda. This. Thought I brought it up. Let's see. Okay. All right. So the town's zoning update committee has put forward proposed zoning titled Planned Community. They presented to the town board at the town board's regular June meeting, which was a week and a half ago. The committee and the supervisor have asked that we provide comments to the committee by the 14th.
Yes, 14th?
Because they're meeting again on the 16th.
Yes.
Watched the video of the chair of the zoning update committee talking to the town board. So what I got from that was that the zoning update committee is going to take in the comments, discuss them further on the 16th, incorporate this into all of the other zoning for 145, and then present it all at some future date to the town board for approval.
Hopefully it's a July meeting. Oh, August, yeah.
July,
Yeah,
this month? Okay.
we're going to
Okay.
try.
All right. I thought he said August.
No, he said at the end of the summer for the fall
Yeah.
thing.
Okay.
Well, probably, but we're going to try to get it as soon as possible,
Okay.
get it out.
Okay. All right. So just I'm not going to. Thankfully for all of us, read through this word by word. But just the major points. So this would need to be property that's over 400 acres. This would need to be accessed from a county or state roadway. Part of what was brought up is that there needs to be a conservation analysis that is done. And then there's a list of all the allowable uses. And then there's a bit of a catch-all in letter H, such other uses as may be approved by the planning board in issuing a special permit for a development plan consistent with the purposes of the planned community. So they're laying out different ideas, and then H allows for some further flexibility there. Special permit for a master development plan. And just all different analyses that would go along with that. Phasing plan, minimum of 60% open space and no more than 25% maximum impervious surface coverage. I think maximum building height of 45 feet. Open space buffers. Shall provide open space buffers of at least 100 feet from the property line of an existing residential uses. Shall be served by essential public water and sewer systems. And I think also in there was that any modification would need to be as part of the community as a whole, not that, I own this piece of this community, I want to do something different. It's got to be part of the whole community. All right, so did anybody have any thoughts or questions? Anything that you thought, oh, it should probably include this, or, oh, I don't think that's a good idea to include that, or, no? Okay. All right. The only thing,
Fluid situation at this point.
sure. I'm glad it has the requirements of the county and state roadway entrances, because I could see it being certainly a problem if this were to be some kind of community that would flood a local road, a town-controlled road. Also, that was another part of it, that all the roadways within the planned community would be private roadways. Yeah. So as to not burden the highway department.
I mean, it's a really big, 400 acres is big, though. Does it make sense to require every road to be private? I mean,
Yes,
yeah, okay.
town is not taking over the road.
Yeah, I know that we had a large project proposed years ago for Dover Knolls, and I think the town was going to take over like the two main crossroads, I believe. So the way it's written though is there's no option for the town to take over a road. It's all private.
We also, at the meetings we discussed, there's one where the road would be taken over by the town after so much percentage of the development is taken over, and it's coming back now because the development never took over 80%.
Right, it's supposed to be like
It has
85 or
three-
90.
It only has 3 houses out of the 10.
Right. Yeah, I remember
And they want the town to take the
Yeah,
road.
Engineer Berg and I have had discussions like that in the past where it's like, it's supposed to get to 80, 85, 90%, something like that.
80
Yeah.
is typical, and it's tough to get there.
Yeah,
And I think that's, the committee wanted to avoid that in the future.
okay. Right, I guess if you have some kind of master development plan for, basically you're creating a little village, it's possible this could take 20 years to fully build out. I mean, maybe it's something that someone's like, hey, this is the plan, we're moving forward, 4 or 5 years, it's started, finished, done.
Could be.
But yeah, things change, so. Let me just, we'll go to the, I know ACARF had a memo, it was just the one thing I had was about the 100-foot, setbacks to the neighboring properties, location of any primary structures, the use of business, commercial, lodging, recreation, restaurant. The proposed project shall be subject to a minimum setback of 200 feet from any adjacent property line for parcels that are not part of the project.
That question was answered, he had that in in his presentation. We didn't want 100 feet or 125 feet if it was going to be restaurant recreation, and there's a current house right here.
Right. Yeah, I
So
think,
200 feet would be better. than
yeah, further down, there's
120.
something about than 100 feet.
Yeah.
Where was that?
100 feet is a
Oh, here we go.
buffer.
Open space buffer.
Open space buffer.
Open space buffers of at least 100 feet from the property line. Okay, so like a residential structure could be built 101 feet from the property line, but if it's a restaurant, it needs to be 200 feet from the property line. That's what I'm reading.
200 feet
Okay.
buffer, yeah.
Okay. But that the 100-foot,
No,
No, the
No,
100
no,
feet is
the
just for
property
from
line.
open spaces. The, all interior setbacks are proposed to be put forth with the development plan. They're not put down in here. The developer's supposed to propose what they want their interior setbacks to be, but that 200 foot is kind of like that exterior setback to other properties and structures, and then the 100 foot is from open space, I believe.
okay.
Or it's a
That's not how
100 foot
I-
buffer of
Probably
open
needs
space
to
from
be
residential.
clarified.
That's not how I'm reading, because it says,
Okay, you're right, you're right.
a master development plan in the planned community shall provide open space buffers of at least 100 feet from the property line of any existing residential uses that are not within the planned community. So,
Except for everything that's not.
100 feet
so
on the
after 100 feet from the property line, you could build something, but then up here it says it can't be,
Commercial uses.
yeah,
right?
basically commercial uses. The commercial uses have to be 200 feet. So that tells me that you could have a house 105 feet from the property line
Of another house.
of the,
Yeah.
yeah. But then also, the way it's worded, this was the other part of it I was thinking, is, shall provide open space buffers of at least 100 feet from the property line of any existing residential uses that are not within the planned community. So if someone has a property that has nothing there, but could eventually have a house,
100 feet.
it doesn't have to be 100 feet from the property line.
It only says existing.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So if there's no house, then you could have it, whatever, I guess then regular zoning would be 30 feet or 40 feet from that property line.
Shouldn't it be from the existing setback lines of those residential?
Yeah,
So the houses built in the future aren't? Because they have certain rights to those
Or would you
lots that are
be,
not
Right.
built.
so that, like, so it makes me think that you could build something 30 feet from the property line if that's what the
The house-
backyard setback, I don't remember what it is for RURC, we could obviously look it up, but it's certainly not 100 feet.
So it's
And
an empty
then,
lot, you could be within.
right, and then, so you could make it 30 feet, 31 feet, whatever, and then someone could build their house, but then that doesn't mean you have to then move your house, you don't have to then move your structure, so.
That person then may have their house 25 feet or 50 feet away.
Right, right.
It'd probably solve all the confusion if they put all of these similar things all in one section.
Yeah,
So
Maybe.
that you
That's
wouldn't
true.
be looking back and
Yeah.
forth and saying,
somebody
does
misses
this?
something.
Just have a setback section,
Yeah,
so all the setbacks are here, okay.
Bulk table
Dimensional
section.
standards.
Yeah,
maybe with a couple of examples to make it clear.
that's all. Because again, I'm trying to think of whether it's a year from now, 5 years from now, when we actually have to do this, and we're then trying to figure this out then.
it could be, I mean, instead of the term residential uses, do we want residential zoning? And then you're looking at having those setbacks from properties that aren't built on yet, but they could have homes in the future.
Right,
Go from their setback line.
That's just-
right, just whatever the property line is could be 100 feet
Yeah,
back.
or any
Property or
property
setback line.
adjacent to the plant.
Right, but then if it's adjacent to a commercial property, then it doesn't have to have the 100-foot open space
Yeah.
buffer.
It makes more sense to be from their setback line. That way,
But maybe they would want to be 100 feet from a commercial use. I don't know.
Well, the applicant it's the duty of the applicant when they design their project
Mhm.
to set up their own setback structure.
that's internal.
So what they're talking about here is confusing but when you see it saying open space buffers,
Mhm.
but then they still have to put them all in one place because it's not clear here, what the open space buffer is for any set of requirements.
Right, it almost seems like it'd just be
It'd be a
more
setback.
straightforward, just that there's a 100-foot buffer.
Around the entire external.
Yeah, I mean, should not apply where residential uses be buffered lie across a state or county highway or something, like, I don't know that it needs to be 100 feet away from the state road for certain things, but, okay, so it was just, that was really the only part of this whole thing that, just kind of came out to me like, I think this needs to be just a little further investigated, thought out in terms of, okay, well, what about this, what about that, what about that, what about this? Does anybody have anything else that, I know I already asked, but, all right, I know Cariff had a memo.
Yeah, so I'll just, I guess, start from the beginning then. And this is pretty high level because we are thinking that the town is going to have their attorneys and someone look at that
Right.
further, right? So,
Yeah.
first of all, it's in Article 8, Administration and Enforcement. It doesn't seem to fit there, so we're kind of just recommending that choose a different location.
Like supplementary regulations.
It's supposed to be under, I had brought that up at the meeting, it's supposed to be under 14552. It's
Oh.
going to be after Country Inn and Conference Center,
Okay.
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, that makes.
So it'll
totally
probably
makes
be 14552.3.
Or something, right, okay.
Oh, okay, yeah, because it gets
Okay.
into, that's where we were
'Cause
adding in the
That's
the
when I read
extras.
that, I said, I got to
Yeah.
tell her that.
Gotcha, okay.
Cool, that's good to know. then we were just kind of wondering overall, I mean, you had brought up that in the meeting, and we watched the meeting
Right.
too, that they said that there's more coming, and it was
Right.
kind of like, well, what else is coming? Because there's blanks in here, so are
Mhm.
they going to be filling in the blanks? Are there going to be
Right.
additional things such as that conservation analysis that it talks about?
Mhm.
There are some things that they could be alluding to in the code that they might be talking about, but there isn't necessarily a conservation analysis in the code right now. So
Right.
we're just kind of wondering overall
Mhm.
timeline and what additional things they're thinking of adding on to this.
Right.
And then to tack onto that, then SECRA. I mean, I guess we're just curious, wanting to verify that the town board is going to be doing it, because there are then parts in the law that talk about having something submitted before the before this law is even. At the
Which,
end it says, I think if you search for DEIS, but, let me find it.
Nothing in the law that says DEIS.
No, what did it say?
Secret comes up.
For projects for
Please.
which, it's at the very beginning, under B, at the end, for projects for which a draft environmental impact statement has been submitted prior to the adoption of this section.
For projects
Environmental
for which,
analysis
okay. For which,
included
okay.
may substitute for a conservation analysis. So,
We don't have any of those projects.
Yeah, there's nothing in us right now anyway.
well, how could they submit if it's not allowed? This is just a confusing statement that probably should be removed in general, which I think is another one of our comments.
Okay.
Unless they know something.
It kind of makes it seem like they're trying to have somebody else do the environmental impact statement for this, when if the town is passing this zoning law, then they need to be doing the environmental review and going through SECRA on it, so.
Right.
um,
I mean, there's one project that we're all aware of that is interested in this zoning, and they submitted a scoping document, but not a draft environmental impact statement. So,
Well, and
I don't know.
if the town is the one championing it rather than the applicant, the town is saying that this could happen on more than one property. They're not making it just for this one application coming through.
Right, it could be for any application that's 400 acres off a county state road.
Right, so they're gonna have to do some type of, even if it's generic, an
Mhm.
environmental impact statement to review what the potential impacts are. And so then you're looking at, how many properties are there in Dover that are 400 acres? Probably not a lot, but something that it doesn't necessarily speak to that we also highlighted was like, what about the assemblage of parcels?
Right.
So do we want people to be able to have, a couple 100 acre parcels that are all next to each other that they all buy up and then they can, turn into this, or was the
I
meaning
guess
of it?
they could propose that, right.
Right.
And now that we're talking more about it, actually, I'm thinking, like, because there's zoning in place for the Psych Center properties, could someone who owns the Psych Center properties take this zoning and apply this zoning to that property,
As it stands.
and then, like, which is more beneficial to them, I guess? Because, I mean, that was, that zoning certainly allowed for a lot, so I don't know that this is, more advantageous or not, but it's just occurring to me now that, like, it could be for those
I think
properties as well.
the wording in the Country Inn Conference Center does have something about assemblage, so maybe the wording should be similar to that.
Very nice.
That's how we're being serenaded.
So that was one of the comments that I had, has to do with when you choose whether you're applying for this master plan or not.
Mhm.
I think it could use a little more clarity as to, when the choice is made to proceed this way or under the existing zoning, because it says you don't need a master plan if you're just building a use that's allowed under existing zoning. So if I wanted to be
Right.
tricky, I would come in and propose all of my 100 single-family homes and all of my two-family homes, everything that's allowed under the current zoning without having to do a master plan.
For phase one, yeah.
And then, then I've negated that whole master plan requirement, and then I come in later for the hotel. when I'm ready. But then everything else is in place, and it takes away some of the
That's what I
master
would
planning.
recommend.
Yeah.
That's what we have recommended in other towns, so that's the way it would go.
So
Interesting.
maybe just some clarity, like either you
Sure.
are, anything over, 50 acres has to proceed under this or something.
So if you want it to be a master plan, make sure it's locked in. that
Well, yeah, I
someone-
mean, is there a way that,
Guy can't come around it.
is there a way that the zoning can be written such that if you take this step, it precludes you in the future from using this to, to,
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think we need to have them decide whether they're proceeding this way or that way
Right.
very early on.
Well,
Yeah.
And I'm
really,
sure we
can
can
you
come up with
legally do
language.
that?
well, I don't know. I mean, that's what I'm, it's like if you have 400 acres and you come before us to subdivide it into, just to make it the math simple, it's in a district that allows 2-acre zoning, you're going to have, 100 2-acre lots. Obviously, there's whatever, buffers around it, conservation, there's some swamps. You can't do everything, but, and then you say like, oh, well, hey, you know what? I can use this zoning to apply, for this, that, and the other thing that's allowed, and the housing's it's already been subdivided, you can't unsubdivide it.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just,
Is there something in here that they said that if you change anything, you have to come back to complete amend?
Right, no.
Yes, but that's if it's already under that
Yeah, I think
master
what-
plan.
I think
We're talking
what,
about triggering it in the first place.
I think what
yeah.
Attorney Polidoro is getting at, and Engineer Berger said there's been advised in other towns, is like you kind of, know what you want to do, but you do part 2 first, so you can kind of have it all set up for the way you want it, and then do the next part, which is like, hey, now that I'm in front of you and you already subdivided this land for me,
And I
I'd like to
don't
apply
think
for this, I'd like to use this zoning so I can have my hotel, I can have this, 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 and this, and it kind of gets around. Then the environmental analysis has to take into account, okay, well, now there's 100 houses here. Yeah, so maybe there's some way to write it so that it doesn't allow for, if you've taken some action, whatever that is, it precludes you from then utilizing this zoning.
Right.
I don't know what that action is. I'm just saying maybe there's a way to,
The
Something,
other
yeah.
thing I think could be clarified is, if, once you have a master plan, let's say you have a master plan over 400 acres, there's the provision that says if there's a change of use, you don't need to amend the master plan. But there should be some standards for what would trigger a new master plan, because if I was approved as a hotel and I'm decided I'm going to start building rockets, that should trigger a master plan amendment.
I think so.
So maybe there's a threshold, like any change of more than 10% impervious or 10% traffic or 10, some kind of threshold that says time for a new master plan. Because I understand the person who's putting on the back porch can't handle a master plan for 400 acres, right? Once the lots get sold, people are going to come in and change their houses and do little things. Maybe.
Yeah, I think,
Good point.
Right.
To that point, you might want to exempt have it specifically exempt some residential
Right.
uses.
Like, how does this work once it's built?
yeah, that's a good question.
So Poughkeepsie, they have overlaying development zone, and they've been doing that for years. And so if you create overlay and you allow the houses to go in with smaller setbacks, down the road, if any individual lot wants to come in and make any changes to that initial plan,
Right.
the entire plan has to be relooked at.
Which is
Changes.
how this is written, right?
Right.
So,
right
but
now.
that's right in their code, so it's very clear. I just had to do one.
Yeah.
For a simple single lot family house moving 5 feet,
Right.
because it was separate from the original plan. They had to go back and planning board and everything for the entire thing for changes. But that was part of the original plan, so everybody knew it.
Right,
up
right, right.
front. So either you build the house the way it was approved back 10 years ago,
Right.
or this is the process you have to do. So we probably need to make it very clear with the changes, not, it's so clear that nobody misses it.
Right. Right, because I can see where the master development plan says, we're going to put the house here. 5 years later, you start digging for the basement, you realize, oh, it's like a giant thing of ledge, and we could just move that, if we move the house 10 feet this way, it'd be fine. What you're saying is you'd have to go through the whole process again, to move the house 10 feet.
Doesn't show that you didn't have effects on all the others because
Sure.
you were given all these waivers or all these extra benefits by doing an overlaid
Right.
zone, kind of like here, doing a master plan. If we didn't do one and you're trying to get away without doing one, there's got to be a very clear, okay, you didn't do one, but if these changes occur, you now have to, the whole site has to be reevaluated,
Right.
regardless if you built those 100 houses or not. And if that means you have to make changes, that's your problem.
Right.
That way it's clear.
So some future understanding of when you need to make changes to the master plan.
Yeah.
And what would trigger it, and when you don't. And
But
Right.
very, very clear, too.
just clear guidelines for how
Right.
this
There's
works.
so many of these towns, I read the guidelines are so, you end up in the zoning board all the time
Right.
trying to verify what
It-
does it mean.
So, I mean, that could be in the zoning, or it could be in the master plan that the planning board adopts, saying,
Yeah.
like, like an amendment section near the bottom, that's like, if you want to change this or this, you have to come back to us or something.
It could. I
Right.
mean, I like it better in the zoning because then it's,
Well, it's not
Thinner,
as,
but-
sure.
but yeah, it could be part of the master plan as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Another thing was ARB. This says you have to come up with your own design guidelines. That's great, but are we specifically superseding the guidelines in chapter, 35 or whatever it is? And, are we exempting from ARB approval if the ARB is ever reconstituted?
Right.
And, is this exempt from zoning board variances if we're coming up with their own standards? And is that, forever, or just once the master plan's adopted and then you need a variance if you don't comply with your master plan?
Right, if you want to do something different, do you have to come back through the planning board to do something different, or can you say, oh, you know what, I want to go to the ZBA to get a variance?
Right.
I mean, I guess if you went through this process, the way that's written is you have to continue to go through this process. You can't go to the ZBA. Maybe that just needs to be explicit.
Mhm.
Yeah, something to think through.
Yeah.
We noticed that the
Well, and I'm sorry, and also legally, can you make it so that, like, the only appeal then is to go to court? Like, if you don't like what the planning board says, well, you're gonna have to move your house 10 feet, and you're like, well, I don't want to go through this whole process again. I'd rather just go to the ZBA, and they say it's fine. Like, well, that's not allowed in the law, and then they say, okay, well, now I'm gonna sue the town. But you agreed to the process at the beginning, so, yeah, I guess
Yeah,
I guess it would just be wasting your money and time in a courtroom, but,
I don't know.
Right.
There's a black and white answer.
Yeah, yeah,
I think
sure,
it's questionable, but
Yeah.
I think if you're giving the planning board all that discretion to set the standards, then there is no ZBA process because the planning board has all of that discretion.
right.
The zoning board exists because the planning board is bound by those dimensional regs.
Right. But, right, if the dimensional regs or whatever the planning board decides for this planned community,
Yeah,
if we decide that, and you don't like it, right, what happens?
Too bad.
That's too bad. That's too bad. You can just go with whatever the underlying zoning is, I guess. That's, I guess, how I would read the law in total, just.
No, the law applies
Mhm.
to master planned communities.
Right.
So the master plan is a given that you will have a master plan.
Right, but if
The
the,
planning board doesn't make the master plan.
yes.
They make their master plan, and the planning board says
yes or no?
yes or no.
Right,
That's right.
And first, they have to do the conservation analysis.
right. So if the planning board says no, what's their remedy?
What's their remedy?
Yeah.
Well, what's anybody's remedy that doesn't get their project approved? Their remedy would be, I guess, they could come up with a different master plan. I mean, we can't guarantee that we'll approve everything that comes before us. What
Right.
would be the purpose of having a planning board?
I agree.
Corey, when we were doing this law, we did not look at the project that was handed to us. We did not look at Starkdale and nothing that they gave us. It was what we wanted to do for the town, not what needed to be done for that project.
Yeah, they should
Right.
modify to meet what we want.
Yeah.
Some other questions for the planning board. There's a 45-foot height limit.
Right.
Does that mean that every residential building gets to come in at 45 feet? Or do you want to differentiate between, commercial buildings and residential buildings?
Hmm.
Or,
Yeah.
True.
But again, I guess it seems like the way the law is written, and what Member Robertier just said, is that the planning board could say, they could propose 45 feet for every building, the planning board could say, well, no, we only want 30 feet for residential buildings.
can't. I mean, that, without guidelines,
Mhm.
People,
what's the rational basis for you saying no if they're coming in with something that meets
You
the
couldn't say
standards?
no to
And-
that, Ryan, because it's right in the law. You would have to do what she said and make the law, if you wanted it to be different for residential, then that would be in the law. It just says
Well-
building height there.
Yeah, it says
so-
maximum building height shall be 45 feet, doesn't mean you're entitled to have every building be 45 feet.
Well,
But why
Just
not?
saying the
the way
maximum has
that's
to
written,
be.
it does, so she makes a valid
No, I don't see that it does say that.
well,
It just means you can't have a building that's 46 feet tall.
Try to think of it from a secret process too. Like you'd be looking at worst case scenario, right? If this is to get implemented, worst case scenario is every building is going to be 45 feet. Does that fit the character of Dover? Probably.
Probably not.
I'll let you guys decide that. But I think that's what.
Minimum height?
35.
I guess one floor?
I
I don't know.
Building
I
code
mean, yeah, I don't
takes
know
care
if
of
it's
that probably. But that's just, something to take care of is you kind of do need to look at worst case scenario. And to Victoria's point too, a lot of people are going to come in and think, if you guys generally feel like a residential structure should have a lower height, then you should put that in now because that's going to provide clear guidance for people coming in. It's going to make the process a lot smoother going down the line
Okay.
too.
When you say you guys, not us.
The
Sorry,
planning
I
board.
mean,
Yeah.
you should suggest it to the town board because it
Right.
will make your planning board lives much smoother.
I mean, I think it's a great first step. It's just, as we think through some of how an application would work through the process, there's, a few things that still need to
Yeah,
be
I guess
figured
to
out.
be clear, overall, I think this is a great idea. It's just kind of like thinking of the minutia 2 years from now of, oh, wait, we should have thought of this or that. I'm trying to think of this or that now, not
I mean-
2 years from now when we're like, well, I guess every building's 45 feet tall now,
A
or,
developer's goal is to maximize profit.
Oh, I would.
And so if you have 45 feet and if you say employee housing doesn't count towards these limits, I'm coming in with some very innovative employee work program where people are paying to come work on my property and, I'm figuring out all the,
and you have a structure that's 3 basements deep and.
yes, exactly.
But,
There's no maximum depth.
And then we wonder why the building goes.
So, okay, anything else?
I mean, definitions, I thought, I just think, and maybe the committee's taking care of this because they're redoing the other parts of the zoning
Right, maybe
law.
the definitions are just part of the overall 145.
But like
yeah.
the term duplex, we don't use that term elsewhere. So is that a new term or should that just be two-family
What was that?
What was
duplex?
Oh, duplex.
Rather than two-family home, it says duplex.
Oh,
Okay.
So is it something different? Is it not? Just making sure that everything matches between the new and the old.
Along that point, there's also this term or phrase traditional neighborhood layout that's fairly vague and suggests either clarifying or removing maybe because it's just that's as a part of the planning board's
This was a
process you
traditional
can
neighborhood
kind of work that out.
Also, but it says traditional neighborhood development described in blank. So,
Is it coming?
right, so I guess,
I think he left the numbers out because
Yeah.
if it's becoming part of the
Right.
current 145, those numbers could change in the new 145. So if you put the old numbers in,
don't
we
think
just
we
have to
have
go back and change everything.
those in
well, no, maybe it's also something that's being
Currently.
proposed with the zoning update committee, is that
Yeah.
here's what the zoning update committee is saying are traditional neighborhood development line,
Yeah.
principles.
Just clarifying that type of stuff, so
Right.
that, like I said, then when applicants come in, they have a better understanding of what's expected of them. Makes
Sure.
the process go smoother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious to see what the traditional neighborhood layout would be. Every house has a mailbox, a dog in the front yard, like,
Bicycle rack,
Like you must
Bicycle,
have a village center, you know, what does that mean? Yeah.
flagpole,
Sidewalk.
anything further?
parking for 7 cars.
Okay, so what we were tasked to do was to get comments back to the zoning update committee, and what the town supervisor said was to Secretary Van Millen by the 14th. So
Yes.
I see you've been writing down everything, or
Yeah,
just about
I-
everything we've been saying. Okay, so I don't know that we
I think I
necessarily have
got
to.
most of it.
Yeah, I don't know that we necessarily have to come up with a memo from the planning board, because it doesn't seem like.
I'll start putting it together, and I'll give it to you, and you can review what I put in there on the list
Sure.
of things that were discussed.
Yeah, I mean, does anybody have any objections to anything that was brought up? Like, oh, I'm totally against whatever. Okay. So maybe-
The only thing I have is,
Paul, in the mic, please.
Yeah, just microphone. Thank you.
the duplex, and then it says multifamily. What is multifamily? Is that
Then 3 or more?
2, 5, 8, 10? It's
Already
semantics.
in the law.
Also define what a family is.
Right, good point, yes.
It's already, I think the definition is already in the law
Okay.
for multifamily.
Okay.
But right, we should think through it. I mean, I know you weren't
Yeah.
thinking through any specific proposal, but we did have a proposal in front of us that envisioned like 13-unit buildings and
Right, apartment buildings.
Yeah.
so.
Small apartment buildings, but apartment
Yeah.
buildings. Yeah.
And I'm assuming that the 500 square foot limit, we should think through also in these units, if for multifamilies, are we applying the 500 square foot requirement that's elsewhere for accessory apartments? Because these aren't quite accessory. It would be units.
I mean, if that's where you live, it doesn't seem very accessory. That's your apartment.
I know one
What
thing
is
that
that
was
about?
brought up after this was that in the future, these are apartments or used for workforce. What happens if they decide to change it over, that they want to sell them as condominiums?
True.
So I think we were talking about putting the wording of a deed restriction.
But why wouldn't you want them to, what would be the difference if it's rented or owned?
That was just one of the conversations
Yeah.
we were having.
You know, I mean, it's, right, once it's built, it's hard to control.
Sure.
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Are you taking my glasses? You don't want my glasses. All right. Okay, so how about this? How about a motion for the motion for the planning board to allow for the planning board chair and planning board secretary to draft a memo to the zoning update committee with the sentiment of the planning board for this proposed legislation.
So moved.
Motion made by Member Palmer, seconded by Member Sador. Discussion? Okay. I guess in just the next couple days, if you're like, hey, you know what, actually this, or something, just send Secretary Van Millen and I, email, and we'll put it in, and then, okay. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed say no. Any motion passes. I saw Secretary Van Millen, I'll get with you tomorrow or Wednesday.
I'll start working on it tomorrow.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I'm around a lot
Afterwards tomorrow.
tomorrow and chunk of Wednesday, so, okay. All right, thank you, everyone. Mouse is not working, there we go. All right, so, our next scheduled meeting is July 21st. You sent us an email that as of 12:01 last Wednesday, nothing had come in by the deadline.
You like that, huh?
And we finished up 198 Dogtail Corners Road tonight, so I do not see a reason for the meeting on July 21st. So there is no meeting on July 21st. Our next meeting is then August 4th. The deadline for that is July 16th, which is 9 days from now. Do we already have something? There isn't already something like coming in, right?
Not that I know of.
Okay. All right. And then we'd have a meeting after that, August 18th.
18th.
After the August 4th, yeah, August 18th. Deadline of then July 30th, yeah. Okay. Seeing no further business before the planning board, I'll make a motion to adjourn, seconded by
Second.
Member Palmer. All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. We're adjourned.